My name is Elizabeth Lilburne. Maybe you haven't heard of me. My husband John was the famous one. Now, back in our day, John and I were part of a group called the Levellers. Do you know what Levellers believed in? Maybe you can guess from the name. We believed that everyone should be equal in levelling things up. We didn't think that it was right that some people, like the king, were very rich, while other people, like us, were very poor. We didn't think it was right that the king could tell people how they should worship, and definitely didn't think that it was right that the king got to rule over all of us just because he was born to it. Does that sound fair to you? No, of course not. In 1642, a war broke out in England called the English Civil War. It was between the Royalists, they believed that the king should be free to do whatever he wanted, and the Parliamentarians, we believed that the king had too much power and that he should have politicians to help him rule and make decisions. John was arrested lots of times for speaking out against the king. Sometimes I even went to prison with him. I gave birth to my first baby in prison in Newgate. But I and lots of the other wives of the men who'd been arrested tried to help free them. Now, this doesn't mean we dug secret tunnels or broke into their prison cells, although that might have been fun. No, it meant writing lots of letters, explaining how badly our poor husbands were being treated and how unfair it was that they'd been arrested just for saying what they believed. And they really were treated badly. In Oxford Castle, for example, sometimes prisoners would sleep with 60 men in a small room. Now, writing letters might not sound like much, but in my day, most people couldn't read or write, especially not women who were poor. Women were meant to stay in the home cooking and cleaning. It was a bit of a shock to all of these men to see all these women suddenly going around telling them what to do, how to rule, and who to let out of prison. They didn't want to listen to us at first. Once, a big crowd of us women took a letter to Parliament, and the men there all shot their guns to try and scare us away. But we stood firm and made our voices heard. And it worked. Our husbands were set free. John, though, went back to prison lots of times because he liked to speak his mind, so I kept very busy, writing and delivering these letters asking for him to be set free and looking after our 10 children at the same time. In 1642, John was locked up in Oxford Castle. The Royalists wanted to execute him for treason. Treason means you've upset the king, and John had certainly done that. I wasn't going to let that happen, though, so I managed to persuade the Parliamentarian leaders in London to say that if the Royalists executed John, then we would start executing Royalist prisoners in return. Then I had to carry this letter all the way from London to Oxford. I was about to have a baby, so I couldn't even ride a horse, and it was the middle of winter. It was a very hard journey. But I got there just a couple of hours before John was to be executed. John was saved, and it was all down to me. Lots of men were saved because of the hard work of their wives. We didn't get much recognition, of course. People didn't want to believe that women could do useful things on their own in those days. But I like to think we proved them wrong, didn't we?